There are many cases of people who go missing or who are murdered, and we see their photos and their names all over the news. We're able to piece together what their lives may have been like and what were the circumstances that may have led to their death. But then, there are the Jane Doe and the John Doe cases, the names we give to victims whose names we do not know. These people had lives, friends, and family. They had a story and they had a name, but in death, they remain unidentified. Hey everyone, my name is Lauren Elizabeth. Welcome to my channel and welcome to a new year. I hope everybody had a good New Year's and celebrated safely, and I hope everybody is ready for 2021 to be a better year than 2020. Today we're talking about the case of the Walker County Jane Doe. Normally I like to begin my videos by telling you about the people involved, who they were, and what their lives were like before they became a part of a true crime case. However, with the Jane Doe case, we don't know what their lives were like before, and we don't even know their real names. At 9:20 a.m. on November 1st of 1980, a truck driver was driving along Interstate Highway 45 near Huntsville, Texas, when he spotted something unusual off the side of the road. He quickly realized this was the naked body of a young woman laying face down in the grass. The young woman was naked, aside from a gold pendant necklace found around her neck. A pair of red leather high-heel sandals were found not very far from her body. Her body showed no signs of decomposition, suggesting that she was killed not very long before she was found. Walker County Jane Doe was estimated to be between the ages of 14 and 18. She weighed around 110 pounds, was 5 foot 6 inches tall. She had hazel eyes and light brown wavy hair, around 10 inches long. She wore a gold necklace with a rectangular blue stone pendant. Her ears were pierced, but she was not found to be wearing any earrings. Her toenails were painted pink, and her fingernails were bare. She had a 1-inch scar near her right eyebrow. She was described as looking overall healthy and well-nourished. Her teeth were in good condition and showed signs that she had received dental care at some point in the past. Now this is the part where I'll discuss how the body was found in terms of injuries. I won't be extremely graphic and I won't include any post-mortem photos, but I don't want to leave out any facts, so if you are sensitive to that type of thing, you can skip forward past the details. There were a large number of bruises across the body, with her lips and right eye being severely swollen, indicating that the victim had been severely beaten before she was murdered. Her right shoulder also had a deep human bite mark. It was found that she had been sexually assaulted, raped with a foreign object. There was no semen found in or on her body, however, conventional rape was not ruled out. There were fragments of pantyhose and her underwear found inside of her body. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxia due to ligature strangulation, or in other words, she was strangled to death. It's considered very likely, although not confirmed, that she had been strangled with the pantyhose that would later be found inside her body. If you're rejoining us after skipping forward, the short version is that Walker County Jane Doe was brutally assaulted before she was strangled to death. The autopsy estimated that she had been dead for around 6 hours when she was found, putting her time of death at around 3:20 in the morning. Not being able to identify her, authorities reached out to the public for information, and while no one seemed to know exactly who this girl was, there were reports of people who had seen her the day prior. The manager of a nearby gas station said that he had seen a teenage girl who he was sure was the Jane Doe the previous day on October 31st. She had come into the gas station at around 6:30 p.m. She was traveling in a blue 1973 or 74 Chevrolet Caprice that was being driven by a white man. She had asked the manager of the gas station for directions to Ellis Prison Unit, where she said she was meeting a friend of hers. He gave her directions and she left the station, leaving on foot instead of returning to the blue Chevrolet. Another person's sighting corroborated this, saying he'd seen the girl walking north on Sam Houston Avenue nearby to that gas station. A little while later, she was seen again when she entered a hitch and post truck stop on Interstate Highway 45 in Huntsville, Texas. 2 employees here remember seeing this girl and talking to her. They said she seemed young and looked a little bit disheveled. They thought it was likely that she was a runaway. The girl had apparently told them that she was from the Rockport area, which was around 4 hours away from Huntsville, Texas. One of the waitresses remembers asking the girl if her parents would be worrying about her, and the girl shrugged, replying that she was 19 and who cares if her parents would be worried. The waitress said that the girl had asked for directions to the Ellis Prison Unit, just as she had asked the manager of the gas station. The waitress gave her directions drawn up on a napkin, and then Jane Doe left the truck stop, apparently on her way to the Ellis Prison Unit. All of the witnesses gave the same description as the young girl, matching that of Walker County Jane Doe. They all described her outfit the same. She was wearing a light-colored yellow pullover top with a white top underneath. She was also wearing blue jeans and had red leather sandals. although all the witnesses say she was carrying the sandals rather than wearing them. While police still didn't have a name, they had a solid lead to follow: Ellis Prison Unit. They interviewed every single inmate and staff member at the prison and showed them photos of Walker County Jane Doe. However, nobody claimed to recognize her or know anything about her. They looked through missing persons reports of the area that she had claimed to be from, as well as surrounding areas, and spoke with local authorities there, but still nobody was able to identify their Jane Doe. The authorities even searched through yearbook photos from high schools in the area where Jane Doe had claimed to be from, but still they couldn't find any trace of her. On January 16th of 1981, around a month and a half after the body had been found, Walker County Jane Doe was laid to rest. However, to everybody's dismay, they were not able to lay her to rest under her proper name. She was buried in Oakwood Cemetery in Huntsville, Texas, her grave marked by a donated headstone, simply reading, "Unidentified white female. Died November 1st, 1980. The funeral was held open to the public, and was an open casket funeral. The authorities had hoped that somebody there might be able to recognize her, but still nobody did. The authorities continued searching through old records and missing persons reports and doing anything they could to try and identify their Jane Doe, but no progress would be made. In 1999, almost 20 years later, the body was exhumed so that investigators could extract a better DNA sample. DNA samples from Jane Doe, as well as DNA found on the red leather sandals, have been logged into databases. However, so far no matches have been found. Who was Walker County Jane Doe? And who was responsible for bringing her life to such a violent end? There are many theories that attempt to answer both of these questions. However, we still don't have a definitive answer for either of them. Jane Doe's autopsy had found that she was healthy and well-nourished, well taken care of. She had had access to dental care, she was well-groomed, and she was even found wearing jewelry. All of this led investigators to believe that she was not anyone living any sort of transient lifestyle, and if she was a runaway, it seemed that she had not been away from home for very long. But why was nobody coming forward? And why were there no missing people that matched her description? Why was nobody coming forward to say, "That's my sister, that's my daughter, or that's my friend"? Why had nobody reported this young girl missing? It is worth noting that runaway teenagers were treated differently in the 80s, particularly by law enforcement. There was a lax attitude on runaway teens, and authorities rarely, if ever, looked into them, and because of this, they often went unreported. But still, it seems odd that she would have never been reported missing, especially someone so young as Jane Doe was thought to be. We know from the waitress at the truck stop that the young girl claimed to be 19, but looked extremely young. We also know that she had bitterly said, "Who cares?" when asked about her parents, which is definitely something that a runaway teenager would probably say. The girl had told the waitresses at the truck stop that she was from the Rockport, Texas area. However, authorities found no trace of her when searching through Rockport High School yearbooks or talking to Rockport authorities about a missing teenager. Of course, it's likely that Jane Doe could have lied about where she was from, especially if she was in fact a runaway teen. She wouldn't want to tell this random waitress where she was from for fear of being caught and found. Another idea is that Jane Doe could have been an orphan or in foster care, and that she had run away and slipped through the cracks of the foster system to go unreported. We like to think that foster care and protective services wouldn't just allow a missing teenager to slip through the cracks, but I've seen other cases, even in recent years, where things like this do happen, so it is possible. Especially back in the 80s, things might not have been as strictly regulated, and it's something that is a possibility. However, I don't think it's super likely, but it should be considered. When it comes to finding Walker County Jane Doe's killer, it's just as difficult as finding her true identity. Authorities began looking into a possible connection with another case. Another unidentified murder victim, who had been found killed in a similar way, found in a similar area, and she had been killed almost exactly 1 year before Walker County Jane Doe. On October 31st, Halloween of 1979, the body of a young woman was found in a culvert in Georgetown, Texas, not very far from where Walker County Jane Doe would be found a year later. The victim was found to have been beaten, sexually assaulted, and strangled to death, just as Walker County Jane Doe was. She was found to be naked, except for a pair of orange socks on her feet. This victim was later dubbed to be the Orange Socks Jane Doe, or just Orange Socks, after the authorities were unable to identify her. In 1982, 3 years after Orange Socks was found, serial killer Henry Lee Lucas spontaneously confessed to having killed her. He was already serving time for a felony firearm charge when he began confessing to various murders of young women all over the country. As for Orange Socks, he said he had picked her up in Oklahoma and that her name was either Joni or Judy. He said the two had previously had consensual sex. However, while they were driving through Texas, he had wanted to have sex again, and she refused. At which point Henry became enraged. He raped her and then murdered her and left her body in Georgetown, Texas. However, despite his confession, there was evidence suggesting that Henry was not even in Texas at this time, and he was instead working in Florida. It's highly disputed whether or not Henry Lee Lucas actually killed Orange Socks. However, he was sentenced to the death penalty for her murder. But 2 years later, in 1984, he recanted his confession, now saying that he had not killed Orange Socks. His initial confession also didn't seem to line up with evidence suggesting that he had been in Florida at this time. Amidst all the confusion, his death penalty sentence was downgraded to life in prison. Henry Lee Lucas has claimed to have committed hundreds of murders. He was convicted of 11 of these murders, although the validity of some of them are still disputed. As strange as it sounds, he seemed to enjoy confessing to murders, whether he had committed them or not. That's actually relatively common among serial killers, claiming murders that they didn't even commit. I'm not sure if they do it for attention, to confuse authorities, or maybe part of a sick fantasy where they want to pretend that they killed more people than they actually did. Henry Lee Lucas died in prison in 2001 at the age of 64. In 2019, Orange Socks was finally identified. 40 years after she was murdered, she had her name back. She was 23-year-old Deborah Jackson from Abilene, Texas. With the help of DNA profiling and Deborah's sister seeing a composite image of Orange Socks, they were able to match Orange Socks' DNA with her sister's and identify her as Deborah Jackson. Deborah had left her home at age 21, 2 years before her eventual death. Her family had never reported her missing, simply believing that she had settled into a new life and she was doing fine. Deborah Jackson's murder has a lot of similarities to Walker County Jane Doe. They were both found to have been assaulted, beaten, and strangled to death. They were both found mostly naked, and they were both found in Texas. They were also killed almost exactly 1 year apart, with Deborah having been killed on October 31st of 1979, and Walker County Jane Doe having been killed on November 1st of 1980. The idea that Henry Lee Lucas killed Orange Socks is highly disputed, and believed by most that he had just made a false confession. But while Henry Lee Lucas may not have been responsible, a lot of people do still believe that Orange Socks and Walker County Jane Doe were killed by the same person, perhaps a serial killer that the authorities never identified. Web sleuths have linked a couple of murders of other women, including 2 other unidentified women also found along Interstate 45 in Texas. Online sleuths have dubbed this potential killer the I-45 killer. However, the existence of such a serial killer has never been officially recognized by any authorities. In 2015, there was a new lead, or at least a new theory, about the identity of the Walker County Jane Doe. A brother and sister came forward saying they believe they met Walker County Jane Doe at a motel in the summer of 1980. Deanna and her brother were ages 12 and 10 in the summer of 1980, and were staying at a motel in Beeville, Texas, while they were on vacation with their parents. While staying at the motel, the 2 siblings befriended a young girl who was also staying there. They can't remember exactly, but they believe her name was either Kathy, Katie, or Kathleen. They are now positive that this girl was the Walker County Jane Doe. The girl had told them that she was 14 years old, and that she had run away from her home in Corpus Christi, Texas. She was staying at the motel with 2 adults that were unrelated to her, but not much seems to be known about who they were or how she knew them. Kathy had also mentioned that she was hoping to be able to go to Sugar Land Prison, where a friend of hers was. Both of the pictures they have of this girl do bear a striking resemblance to the composites of Walker County Jane Doe. People have also compared the images of Kathy to the post-mortem images, and once again, the resemblance is very apparent. I won't include the post-mortem shots in this video just because I know a lot of people aren't comfortable with that, but for those interested, the photos are an easy Google search. The age that Kathy gave, 14, also fits in with the age of Walker County Doe, as well as matching her physical description. Even a detail as small as the necklace fits. Jane Doe was found with a necklace, and Kathy is seen with a necklace in both photos, although a pendant isn't visible, so we can't tell if it's the same necklace. Kathy said she was from Corpus Christi, while Jane Doe had reportedly said she was from Rockport. However, it's worth noting that Corpus Christi is only about a 30-minute drive away from Rockport, and as I mentioned earlier, it certainly wouldn't be unlikely for a teenage runaway to lie about where she was from. And the fact these 2 areas are so close to each other, it could very well be that she was from one of the towns or an area that was nearby to both of them. Kathy had also mentioned going to a different prison than the one that Walker County Jane Doe was going to. Kathy had said that she had a friend in Sugar Land Prison, while Walker County Jane Doe allegedly had a friend in Ellis Prison. But these two prisons are quite close to each other, so it's very possible that if she had a friend who was in Sugar Land prison, this friend could have been transferred to Ellis prison in the time between July and October when Walker Doe was trying to get to Ellis prison. It's believed by many people that this girl, Kathy, is Walker County Jane Doe. However, with no solid evidence and not even knowing who exactly Kathy is or was, authorities are unable to follow this lead. Web sleuths have pored through yearbook photos from the areas she may have been from, but so far Kathy hasn't been found. No one has come forward claiming to be the girl in these photos, and no one has come forward saying that they know who the girl in this photo is. She's not been matched definitively to any missing person cases, and no one knows who she was, other than that she was 14-year-old Kathy from Corpus Christi, Texas. So I want to talk for a minute about the Ellis Prison Unit and who Jane Doe may have been planning to meet there. During their investigation, police reportedly interviewed every single inmate and staff member there, and none of them claimed to recognize Jane Doe. I'm unsure of the details of how these interviews and questionings were conducted. I'm not sure if the inmates were told about the situation. I don't know if they knew that this was a murder victim. I'm not sure if they saw the actual post-mortem photos of the victim, or if they just saw composite sketches. I just can't wrap my head around why no one claimed to know this girl. Was her friend possibly afraid of admitting to knowing a girl that was now murdered? However, if this friend was afraid of being framed, that seems a little weird because being in prison, you'd think that would be a pretty decent alibi that you hadn't murdered someone outside of the prison. It could also be possible that whoever she was planning on visiting simply did not recognize her. Composite images aren't always exactly accurate, especially the initial composite sketches that they would have had in 1980. And even if they did show inmates post-mortem images, people can often look quite different in death. It's also a possibility that whoever she was visiting hadn't even seen what Jane Doe looked like in the first place. It could be possible that she signed up to one of those prison pen pal services and that she had been writing with a pen pal and decided she wanted to come visit him. It's also possible that this visit was a surprise visit and the inmate/pen pal didn't even know that she was expected to be coming. Another possible angle to the pen pal theory is that perhaps an inmate had developed a romantic relationship with Jane Doe through their letters. According to the autopsy, we know that Jane Doe had been between the ages of 14 and 18, and any inmate at the Ellis prison would have been an adult. So if they had developed an inappropriate relationship with Jane Doe through their letters, that could be a reason why the inmate might not want to admit to knowing her. However, I'm not sure the likelihood or possibility of that one, just because I'm not sure how it would be that these letters went totally unchecked at the prison. I would think any letter going in or out of the prison would be thoroughly checked, so I don't see how an inappropriate relationship could have developed with these letters being checked by the prison officials. However, it's also of course possible that there were people who weren't doing their jobs properly and these letters did go unchecked. There's also the possibility that Jane Doe was never even planning on going to the Ellis prison in the first place. It's possible that she lied about her age and where she was from, so why wouldn't she lie about where she was going? It's possible she was asking for directions to the prison while she was actually planning on going somewhere that was nearby to the prison. I've also heard people who have worked in Texas prisons saying that someone as young as Jane Doe was said to have been wouldn't have been allowed to visit an inmate at Ellis unless she was accompanied by an adult. However, it is possible that Jane Doe had intended to visit someone and simply didn't realize that she wouldn't be allowed to visit on her own. But another thing that is driving me crazy is that, by all reports, Jane Doe was on foot after she got dropped off by that Chevrolet, and she didn't have any luggage or any bags with her, not even so much as a purse. I don't know if she had any money on her. She could have had something in her jean pockets, but she certainly didn't have a change of clothing or any other possessions with her. So if she was planning to go visit a friend in prison, what was she going to do after visiting hours? Had she traveled all this way, probably hitching a ride, walking so far on foot, just to visit someone for a few hours, and then what, turn around and walk back and hitch home? Find a place to stay overnight, maybe? It just doesn't seem to make much sense. To me, it seems like Jane Doe could have been going somewhere that she planned on staying. Somewhere where someone had told her they would look after her, and she didn't need to worry about having her things with her. I definitely think it's a possibility that Jane Doe was never planning on visiting Ellis prison at all. Wherever Jane Doe was planning on going, we know that she obviously did not make it there. There are many theories about who may have killed her. As I said earlier, the idea of Henry Lee Lucas having killed her, or the idea of another unidentified serial killer operating on the Interstate 45 in Texas. There are other theories about who her killer may have been. Some say that a trucker with bad intentions may have overheard the girl talking to the waitress at the truck stop. If a trucker or anyone else in the truck stop had bad intentions, they could have easily overheard everything and known that she was a young girl alone traveling on foot, and they knew exactly where she would be headed. It wouldn't be very hard for them, if they wanted to follow her, find her alone on the road, and fulfill their sinister intentions. It's also possible that she could have come across someone else with bad intentions. Perhaps someone driving by as Jane Doe was walking along the interstate. It is worth noting, though, that where the body was found was clearly not the same location where she had been killed, though she could have been lured into a vehicle where she was killed before the body was dumped on the side of the road. In 2018, yet another new theory popped up about the possible identity of the Walker County Jane Doe. Web sleuths online believe that Walker County Jane Doe may have been one of the girls that attended the Rebecca House School in the late 70s. Rebecca House School for Girls was a quote-unquote reform school ran by a man named Lester Roloff, and from what I can tell, this was basically a cult disguised as a school. This was meant to be a place where parents could send their unruly daughters to straighten them out. However, in actuality, Lester Roloff was an extremist, and most of the girls who attended this school suffered through both mental and physical abuse. In 2018, photos emerged of a girl who was at this school in the 70s. And for a while, people thought that this girl may be the Walker County Jane Doe. However, recently, in 2020, the girl in the photo was identified as a woman who is alive and well, and this lead did not end up being the Walker County Jane Doe. 40 years after she was murdered, Walker County Jane Doe still hasn't been identified, and neither has her killer. People continue to speculate and theorize and search through records and missing person cases in the hopes of restoring her true identity. Many people believe that she's Kathy, the girl that Deanna and her brother had met at the motel. However, that still leaves plenty of questions. Who was or is Kathy? There's not enough information known about Kathy to determine whether or not she was the Walker County Jane Doe. And while it's a very popular theory in the case, there's unfortunately no definitive evidence. This case is honestly a whirlwind, and it's so hard to wrap my head around. I do believe that Walker County Doe was a runaway, but I still just can't understand why she was never reported missing. As I've said, I know missing persons cases were treated a lot more lax in the 80s, and Walker County Doe was said to have been between the ages of 14 and 18. That's extremely young, and even with the law enforcement treating runaways as more lax, I feel like the parents would have or should have reported her missing. I mentioned earlier about Deborah Jackson, or Orange Socks, and how her family had never reported her missing, and they believed that she had simply settled into a new life. However, Deborah Jackson had been 21 when she left home, a lot older than Walker County Jane Doe was. It also could be possible that she was a runaway from an abusive home. The autopsy said that she seemed well-nourished and well taken care for, but she could have been in a home that was mentally abusive. If the family had been abusive toward her and perhaps even kicked her out of the house for not following their rules, that could have explained why she was never reported missing and explained the bitter sentiment that she had toward her parents. I also do believe that Kathy from the motel in Beeville is very likely to have been Walker County Doe. I believe that she became the random target of someone with sinister intentions, either an unidentified serial killer or just some random person who had the sudden, sick decision to end another human life. The biggest point of confusion for me personally is the mention of her friend in prison. Why didn't anybody claim to recognize her? Part of me believes that she was never planning on going to the Ellis prison in the first place. However, if we believe that Kathy was Walker County Doe, which I think I do, then that suggests that she did have a friend in prison, one who had transferred from Sugar Land to Ellis prison. And if she was in fact visiting a friend in prison, I think the pen pal theory is very likely as to who this friend was. It's possible that this pen pal had never seen a photo of her and it was a surprise visit and he didn't know she was coming and therefore never recognized her when the inmates were interviewed. I feel like this case is like a puzzle where it looks like you have all of the pieces, but then as you start to put them together, you realize that half the pieces don't seem to fit where they should. The story of Walker County Jane Doe is as heartbreaking as it is confusing, and I really wish I could talk about her using her real name. It's been over 40 years now, but people are still searching for answers about who she was and who is responsible for ending her life. Hopefully one day we will be able to restore her name and bring her killer to justice. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like true crime content and would like to see more from me, please subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time. Stay safe, everybody.